Okay, welcome to AP Economics problem set 3. Today we'll be talking about the production possibilities frontier. This episode of economics is brought to you by Hong Kong Econ Tutor. In case you need an economics tutor, or maybe you need a biology or English or SAT tutor, and you're excited by the Hong Kong style of learning, by all means, whether you're in California, whether you're in Panama, whether you're in the United Kingdom, step right up. Don't be shy. Go to hongkongecontutor.com and we'll help you out. Okay. The allocation shown in this diagram is what? Well, we've got ramen. I guess we've got ramen over here. We've got sushi here. We've got our little chef. We see that there's an allocation of at least 5 units, bowls of ramen, and then presumably 8 rolls of sushi. And we know that as long as the allocation, that's what this green dot is called, as long as the allocation is along the PPF, along the curve, we know that it is efficient. Impossible, efficient, inefficient, creative, definitely efficient, though it looks pretty creative to me. Which country has an absolute advantage at making ninjas? Okay, so we have 2 PPFs here. We have the United States and we have Japan, and we see that when it comes to ninja production, Japan can make 6 ninjas and the United States can make 7. Okay, so when we're talking about absolute advantage, that's what we're looking for. We're just looking for whoever can make the most of each unit, and we can tell that this will be the United States of America. Which country has a comparative advantage at making ninjas? Okay, now remember, comparative advantage is basically like who should be the one making ninjas? Who has the lowest opportunity cost? And we know that when we look at the United States, it's basically 1-to-1 between cowboys and ninjas. Presumably these are like action figures. Maybe they are real cowboys and real ninjas. But we can tell with the United States it's 1-to-1. Whereas with Japan, it looks like it's more like 2-to-1, right? Japan can make like 2 ninjas for every cowboy. So what that means is that it's actually lower cost for Japan to make ninjas, even though they're not absolutely as efficient as the United States, right? They're not able to create ninjas with an absolute advantage. They are able to make it relatively more efficient or for a relatively lower cost. And so we can say that they have a comparative advantage at making ninjas, i.e. Japan. Okay, next one. The allocation in the below diagram is what? Well, this isn't really below. This is beside, but whatever. We've got 4 options: impossible, efficient, inefficient, or toast. Toast. Wow, weird joke. Okay. Well, if I look at this, what we see is this little chef is only making 9, or I guess if there's 2 each, 18 rolls of sushi. He's making no ramen. Now, the point about this is that actually any point along the curve, any point along the PPF is efficient. You don't have to be in the middle. You don't have to be over here on the right. It can be anywhere along the curve. It can be way down here where you're only making ramen, you're making no sushi. Or it can be here where you're only making sushi and no ramen. The point is, the chef is using everything he's got to make something. He can make some allocation in between, but he's making it all sushi right now, so it is efficient. Okay, the allocation in the below diagram is what? Again, it's not really below, it's beside. But we see kind of a sleepy chef, a lazy chef, so to speak. He's only making 3 bowls of ramen and 3 units or 3 rolls of sushi. And so we can say that he's not doing what is within his productive capacity. If you're along the PPF, that means you're going at 100%. You're going at full capacity. Any allocation below that, and you are inefficient. Okay, in the allocation in this diagram, what's going on here? Okay, extremely inefficient, definitely not. It's beyond the PPF. Super efficient, that doesn't sound like a technically correct economic term. Completely and utterly impossible. What interesting use of the English language. It looks like it might be that one, right? So is this impossible? Achievable through trade. So we have two good answers. So one thing when we're working through these, particularly AP questions, you will oftentimes get two good answers. So you have to pick what's the best. And actually, this is not impossible because two reasons. One, the PPF could shift out, right? You could just get somebody who's better at making sushi and better at making ramen, and or maybe the kitchen expands, or maybe there's more high-skilled immigrants in your country. Whatever, the PPF could expand, or through trade, right? If one country focuses on sushi and one focuses on ramen, or rather one chef focuses on sushi, one chef focuses on ramen, theoretically you could achieve that allocation. So the correct answer will be achievable through trade. Okay, what is happening to production in this diagram? Very simple. He's got a knife. That's scary. That's concerning. Please, sir, put the knife down. Well, we see the allocation is actually increasing. So we start off with 4 bowls of ramen. Now we're at 6. We start off with 5 rolls of sushi, and now we are at 7. Okay, so there's additional ramen and additional sushi being made, probably due to the fact that either the chef has new capital, right, the knife, or maybe there's an incentive for the other chefs to work really hard because they don't want to upset him. So we can say that production is expanding. Not just for sushi, for ramen too. Okay, now, however, in this example, the amount of ramen stays the same, but the amount of sushi expands. So we go from 3 rolls of sushi. Wait a second. Oh yeah, three bowls of ramen, right? Because it's the x-axis. And then we go from 6 to 8 rolls of sushi. So sushi production alone is expanding. Okay, which of the following diagrams represents an inefficient economy? It's clearly this one. Which country has an absolute advantage at making cowboys? So here we just look at Japan, we look at the United States. We know that Japan would be making, at their most, they could be making 3 cowboys, whereas the United States can be making 8. And so we know that the United States has an absolute advantage at making cowboys. Interestingly, the US has an absolute advantage in terms of making both goods. But then the question is, should they make both goods? No, we know that they should specialize and do what they're relatively best at, which is making cowboys. Why do we know that America has a comparative advantage at making cowboys? Because Japan has a comparative advantage we've already established at making ninjas. So it stands to reason if Japan is better at making ninjas, and we don't know who is best at making cowboys, then by extension, the United States is best at making cowboys. And it's not just based on stereotypical knowledge. There are great Japanese cowboy movies, and there are great American Ninja movies, right? Like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Okay, next. Capital goods can most simply be defined as what? Goods bought and sold for their own use or enjoyment. Nope, that sounds like a consumer good. Roads, infrastructure, factories, paint, and other goods and services used for further economic production activities. That sounds good, but, it's not a very simple definition. Goods used to make other goods. That definitely sounds right. Cold hard cash, that's also like a fair option, but the best answer seems to be goods used to make other goods, because cash alone is not capital, right? The cash is used to buy the machinery, to buy the equipment, to buy the branding, to buy whatever it is that allows for other goods and services to be made. Okay, which factor of production is often associated with risk-taking? Entrepreneurship, definitely, right? Entrepreneurs like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, that crowd, okay? Which factor of production is associated with computers and ice cream machines? It would be capital. Okay. What can most clearly be observed? I feel like I did this before today. I feel like I adjusted this PPF before. I might have to redo this. Okay, what can most clearly be observed from the diagram? Well, we can see that investments in capital, right, which is the green circle, right, because there's just more K, they lead to a larger increase than the investments in consumer-oriented items, right, like burgers. So if you get a paycheck and you use more of it on consumer goods, you'll move from this circle, this allocation to this allocation. Whereas if you invest more of it in capital, you're going to go from here to out here. Interestingly, you invest in that capital, you're going to get more consumer output too. So we can say that investments in capital lead to higher levels of economic growth. This makes sense also because capital refers to goods that make other goods. So of course it's going to lead to more growth. And that is that. Okay. See ya.